Welcome, welcome, everybody. So, thank you for joining me today. Very excited to have you here. I hope that you appreciated that fun little countdown that I did before I jumped on. I hope it worked. We'll see how that goes. But if you are joining me live, please put live in the comments. If you're joining in the replay, totally cool. You can put replay in the comments. But welcome to Leading in the Moment with Geronda. It's a dynamic LinkedIn Live series, and it's where we're going to dive pretty deeply into the essence of leadership in today's ever evolving landscape. As many of us know, we have quite a bit that's happening and changing around the world in terms of the workplace. But I want to go deeper into the ever evolving landscape and how it's impacting leadership through this series that I have called Leading in the Moment with Geronda. So I'm Geronda, for those of you who may not know, and I'm really thrilled to embark on this journey with you to explore just kind of these critical facets of what I'm calling courageously inclusive leadership. And we'll get into what that means in a moment. But why did I start this series, and why did I start this journey? And hey, Evolve, thank you for joining. Really, I felt really small and not myself being the only Black queer person in a company, on a team, and this happened to me quite a bit. And the team that I was on, the goals of the team was really to set the policies, help with processes, in a place where there really weren't people like me. That was pretty challenging. Um, and many people feel excluded in many different ways. So everyone's journey and experiences are very different. But for me, it was honestly that really uncomfortable feeling talking about my socioeconomic status at the times, and the fact that I really couldn't wear my natural hair in front of clients, or assumptions that were made that my boyfriend or my husband should be invited to the holiday party. So it became challenging. So I would go home and just feel very misunderstood, and I had no voice to make a difference. And I thought, well, what is the point? I think I just have to mold myself into what everyone really wants me to be. And after a while, having a really transformative conversation with a very important person that I trust at the time, I still trust today, um, it changed my whole mindset, having the conversation. And really, it was, why don't you make this your mission to allow everybody or every person on their team feel included, valued, and empowered to bring their best selves to work? And you can start with those people, but why not start with those the leaders that influence the transformative experiences for employees every single day, and give them the insight and perspective and support that they need to be successful? And I thought, that's a really amazing idea. Let me do that. That's why I started the series, is to bring those snippets and bite-sized pieces of information to really help leaders become courageously inclusive leaders. And that's in corporate settings, tech industry specifically. But it's through those reflective questionings and deep reflection that made me want to start this series and continue to show value to people. So thank you, Ava, for posting this saying included, valued, and empowered. Yes, that is exactly how I want everyone to feel, because I felt that once I started getting over that challenge for myself, it was easier to do that. And having more conversations with leaders over time, they saw that it was very much possible. So, what is this episode going to be about? This episode really is to shine a spotlight on a paramount attribute to successful leadership, and that's courageously inclusive leadership. And really, now more than ever, the call for inclusive leadership really echoes loudly across many different industries, and driving transformation and fostering environments that celebrate diversity. But I think what's challenging, or a hesitation for a lot of people, understandably, is the how. How do I do this in a way where I can set aside any of my fears or my hesitations and be more courageous in showing who I can be as a courageously inclusive leadership? So, or leader. We will talk about exactly what that is in a moment. And um, so going into that, actually, what is a courageously inclusive leader? What does that even mean? Really, it's a mindset. It's an approach that where you're championing equity, your values are being brought in at the forefront, but you're also considering different perspectives and fostering a culture where every voice is not only heard, but genuinely embraced. When someone is heard versus their voice being embraced, it's a very different feeling. And so that's very important to talk about that distinction. And so throughout this series, we're going to start navigating the depths of courageously inclusive leadership and dissecting the core components and unveiling a lot of the different actionable strategies that we can cultivate in this environment where diversity is no longer just a buzzword and it's really shifting into guided principles, guided practices, and action steps. So, together, we're going to explore things like understanding the diversity beyond surface labels. And what that means is diving into the nuances of diversity and recognizing that there are multifaceted natures, different backgrounds, experiences, and they have to be acknowledged and understood for somebody to be able to come in and confidently drive and lead in an inclusive way. Building inclusive cultures, we hear this all the time, but we want to explore different strategies and practices that transform workplaces into inclusive cultures and where individuals do feel that they're valued, they're respected, they're empowered to contribute their best. Um, hey, Rakita, thank you for joining. Oh, so excited. And the third is embracing uncomfortable conversations. That's where a lot of the courage comes in, is the vulnerability, the setting the example, showing the behaviors that you want folks to have. And a lot of that comes with honesty and trust. And that uncomfortable conversation where we can start to look at tools where we can navigate different mindsets and sensitive topics. How do you foster open dialogue that leads to understanding or growth or meaningful change? And really having it be active listening. A lot of times we think about what we're going to say next, but active listening is truthfully hearing, holding space for the person, but acknowledging and thinking of ways we can grow collectively and together. And then leadership roles in driving inclusion. So it's really the pivotal role that leaders play is really steering the organization towards inclusivity and leading by example, but also championing diversity as a strategic advantage. Championing is the big key here. Because how we look to infuse DEI into our culture will be different if it is acted as a separate entity. And so each session, if I could speak today, as I mentioned, is going to really feature a lot of these thought-provoking discussions, insights from industry leaders. I do want to bring more people on and talk about how they embody this or things that they're trying to think of in terms of building more inclusive awareness and that courageously inclusive leadership. So having more of a deep dive conversation about what are the things that they are nervous about, worried about, what do they do that allows them to practice courageously inclusive leadership as well? So join me in this transformational journey. I'm very excited to unravel this inclusive in this journey and this leadership and making this decision for yourself. Really about fostering more inclusive cultures and giving more opportunity to flourish as a leader. I'm really excited to have you here today. So let's get into the topics, but before into the topic, I should say, but before I do, please put live in the chat if you're joining me live, so I can see that you are here and present. And we will go through this information. Before I go into a deep dive, also, I really like to ask a question. I like to just learn a little bit more about my listeners. What are you doing right now? Just any question that I want to throw out there to get to know you more. So the question I want to ask each of you today is, what is the best thing that you had to eat today? The best thing that you ate. It could be something you made. It could be something that you bought. Don't feel shameful if you went out to get it from somewhere. People do that. Sometimes it tastes better. Um, but okay, live. Rakita, you're live. Awesome. Michelle, my wife, is on. Thank you for supporting me in this. So Michelle is live as well. And any response just to the question about what is the best thing that you ate today? For me, I know this is going to sound like kind of bland, so don't judge me. Do not judge me. I absolutely love Cheerios, like probably way too much. And so I had a wonderful bowl of plain Cheerios, which I haven't had in a really long time, and it was amazing. So for me, the best thing I ate today was some Cheerios. All right. I'll let everyone take a little time to think of their answer there. Some people are probably like, I'm not going to answer this question. She's going to judge me. But no judgment ever in these live discussions. All right, so let's get into the topic and I'll see if anyone answers that question. Oh, sweet. Rakita, I've only eaten once today, bacon and eggs. Well, I mean, you're acknowledging you only ate once today. Bacon and eggs is really good. So Rakita, we got to get you having more of those meals going forward. But thank you for sharing that. Eggs are also my favorite too. I had to come to you, Rakita, get some meals made. All right. So I know I mentioned in the beginning what courageously inclusive leadership is, but I'd like to just redefine, give the update again for anyone who just joined or needs to hear it another time. But courageously inclusive leadership really involves actively fostering an environment where diverse perspectives are valued, respected, and integrated into decision making processes. When you think of integrated, that really is a key component of it. You can absolutely value somebody's opinion, or you can value their perspective or respect it. But is it getting integrated into decision making? And to me, I feel that's where the value and respect is really taken to the second level. Um, and that really, when you think of the attributes of a courageously inclusive leader, it's encouraging that open dialogue and respecting the differences and promoting belonging and championing equity and fairness. But what's really helpful and important too is that vulnerability to share mistakes you've made, fears that you have, things that you just don't know and you'd love help with. And really, when you think about this courageously inclusive leadership, there's kind of those two components of honesty and trust. Do you feel that you can be honest with me and trust me because I'm providing you with a psychologically safe space to do so? And that's where things like encouraging that dialogue and respecting the differences and promoting belonging, some of those attributes are really important to foster um, courageously inclusive leadership. Evolve, I just saw your comment. You have homemade tacos and Waterloo. Oh, I really have to start coming to you all. I gotta start coming for dinner because I don't know. I think we're having chicken and some squash and some mashed potatoes. We kind of had an early Thanksgiving, or folks say Indigenous People Day. So we need to. We're gonna have quite a bit to eat and finish, but I think I'm gonna come to you. Moving forward. So, why is it important to think about the courageously inclusive leadership aspect? And really, it really does help drive innovation. It drives innovation because you're now allowing people, or people on your team, or even others across the organization, cross functionally and collaboratively, to share their ideas. You're seeing it as value and you're incorporating it into decision making. Now, this is not to say every single decision has to be incorporated, but at least being heard and valued and making sure that there's cross functional conversation. But it's also boosting teams' morale. I know when I feel that somebody understands me, accepts me, I can share my opinions, I can share my ideas and not have it be something that's reprimanded, I feel a sense of trust. So I will be more honest. And then also we have the different discussions about problem solving and attracting and retaining diverse talent. I think attracting and retaining diverse talent is a topic that comes up a lot, understandably so, because it's really challenging to figure out, how do we retain the talent once we get them into the company? Sometimes you're going to get a lot of people who are diverse that are going to be entering your pipeline, but how do you now keep them in your organization? That can be pretty challenging, but courageously inclusive leadership helps to increase those chances and odds for retention significantly. And so there's actually 5 ways that leaders can shift more into courageously inclusive leadership. And one is education and raising awareness. So it's things like being open to hosting Q&A sessions, training sessions, encouraging team members to learn more about bias and their impact on decision making. That reflection is super important as a leader as well, because the decisions you make about your talent, if they are influenced by bias, that is going to impact retention. So that's very, very critically important. You also want to lead by example. I know I said leading by example a ton of different times, but you do want to lead by example. Admit when you make mistakes and seek feedback. It's nerve-wracking to try to get feedback from somebody when you feel like you really don't know where it's going to go. But how are you going to know that your employees or your team members are feeling heard, feeling valued, that they belong, if you do not ask for continuous feedback? And it's not just feedback about, like, things that can help you learn about them better. Those are very important, but how can you best manage each individual person and their unique needs better? That's very different. Fostering an inclusive environment is number three. So it's establishing inclusive practices in your meetings, ensuring everyone has a chance to contribute, trying not to interrupt people. That can be very challenging, but it's very important, and creating those safe spaces for those discussions, and reviewing and adapting policies. So there's existing policies and practices that could have bias or barriers for inclusion. I will mention that a lot of different policies out there do not have are not very much tailored to folks with disabilities. And that could include folks with visible or non-visible disabilities. That can also include neurodivergency, folks that have ADHD, autism, things of that nature. How are you removing those barriers to inclusion? And even adjusting your hiring or promotion practices as well, and supporting employee resource groups. Do you have employee resource groups? Do you have a space where people of similar identities can come together and feel a sense of community, talk through some challenges, but also support the business in a way that is going to drive more innovation, drive more perspective around the challenges that maybe those that are marginalized are facing in your organization? So before I go into the key takeaways and kind of start to close this out, I would love for you to still, if you're still with me, just put leadership in the chat. Would love to see if you're still with me. I also should have brought some water. But this is really the encompassing of courageously inclusive leadership. When you put courageously in the front, this is not easy work. You're dealing with humans with different needs and identities and wants, but you as a leader, it's going to be challenging because maybe you do have bias against certain marginalized groups that you don't recognize, you're not aware of, but it just really only can help you continuously grow as a leader. So I see some people putting leadership in the chat. Glad you're still with me. Glad you're still with me. So key takeaways from this conversation is that courageously inclusive leadership involves deliberate efforts. You really have to put effort into this to foster an environment where diversity thrives. And tech leaders, especially, can initiate change by educating, setting examples, fostering inclusivity, adapting your policies and practices, even supporting diverse initiatives, being champions of the initiatives. That can be really hard to get other employees to see the value in something without leadership buy-in. That's significant. And so I know that a lot of this really sounds like things you might have heard in your spaces, in your companies, in your organizations, and you're probably thinking, well, why do I need this? Why is this different for me? The reason is, and I'm not saying that unconscious bias training is not effective, it's absolutely effective in more of a foundational sense. Where the work really happens is that continuous reflection and growth and action. You can take a course on unconscious bias. You can learn about things that impact the LGBTQ plus community or Black folks in your organization. But if you are not continuously reflecting on your leadership behaviors that may be impacting your teams and really putting an action plan together and having accountability towards that, we're not going to experience any change. And so that's what I'm here to do, is to give you those really important attributes and actionable tools and ways that you can start to make these changes and help support your teams. So really embracing courageously inclusive leadership, it's not just ticking the boxes, as many of us hear. It's not a checkbox. It's really creating that culture where everyone can feel empowered to contribute their best work, to share things that can make the company better, ultimately leading to a stronger and more innovative team and organization. And it's really, really important, again, that they feel valued in what they're sharing. Like, could you imagine you go to somebody, let's say you go to a friend, you have something really important to share, and you really want that friend to just to hear you out, to listen to you, to make sure that you're heard. And that friend is either not focusing or they don't take it as seriously, and they say, "Oh yeah, 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 okay, yeah, I can help you with that." Silence. That is incredibly frustrating. So would you want to do that to team members that are facing really, really hard challenges? And that's not just in the workplace. We have to consider things that are happening externally for people just around the world. So I really appreciate you joining me. I'm going to put in the comments for you. I'd love for you to join uh, my newsletter. Ooh, man, it's 5:20 here. It should not be struggling, but join my newsletter. It's a link so that you can get updates on when these lives are happening, and you can get actionable insights and tools and different resources as well. And from this too, I offer one-on-one coaching to leaders so we can really put those action plans together and get you to a place where you feel more confident and courageous in tackling those tough conversations and facing your bias so you can be the best, most effective leader that you can be. So join that list. I'd love to hear from you. Also, you can reach out on LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever you are connected to me with questions. I really appreciate all of your time. This series is going to be, so the time is going to change. I know it was 3 p.m. It will now be 5 p.m. Eastern, which is 2 p.m. Pacific. And it's going to be on the second and last Wednesday of each month. I might change the frequency, we'll see. But until now, I will love to see you again in the next video, which is going to be happening on the 29th of November. With that, I hope everyone has a great evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and we will talk soon. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.